Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the back half of Lecture 4, Chapter 11 from Dahl. We're still talking about parties and electoral systems. And we'll jump into the back half starting with Section 3, some basic options for democratic constitutions. Framing a constitution is hard as hell. Um, Things don't always go as planned. There are always loopholes and ways of manipulating the system that you do not foresee. There are externalities that are not considered. And building institutions, as we talked about, is hard, right? It takes generations potentially. And so if you think on day one that your constitution means that like you suddenly have a state apparatus and institutions, that's not a great way to think about it, right? And so later in the chapter, we'll read about Weimar. Later in the semester, we will read Berman's work. She wrote a very famous and incredibly well cited piece about civic society and the collapse of Weimar Germany and the rise of Nazism. Um, you could also ask Larry Diamond, who I think I've mentioned a few times in the course before. We will also read him. He's an excellent scholar. But his constitution that he built for Iraq did not go very well, right? It broke down into sectarianism and violence and, insurgency and worse, right? The French have had 5 or so republics since the French Revolution. They've had multiple collapses of the system. They had Vichy France, where the Nazis were running their regime for a while during World War II. If you look at the Japanese system, they have had multiple collapses. Just like Italy for a while, it was like every 6 to 10 months they had a new prime minister, and that can cause real problems with businesses and economies trying to predict the future, right? Having some sense of stability in the markets and in policy, etc. Um, let's see. What are the 5 basic combinations of electoral systems and chief executives, right? Because these are different things. And so Dahl lists out 5 generalized combinations of an electoral system and a chief executive. The first is sort of what we've been talking about in the first couple chapters is the continental European option. This is a parliament and PR, right? And generally what happens is you have at minimum a lower house, and even the ones that have 2 houses, generally the lower house is the most powerful. And then you have some sort of a combination of all 3 branches under the tutelage of the prime minister and their cabinet. So there is no distinction between executive branch and legislative branch in this continental Euro option. Okay, the second is called the Westminster model. This is a well-studied system from the British Parliament. And a lot of the former colonies of Britain, right? What do they call that? Uh, anyway, it's got a name. I can't remember right now. But you've got UK, of course, right? That's where the name comes from, Westminster. But then you've also got New Zealand. They actually changed their elections in the last few years, so they have moved to a parliamentary system. But for a long time, they operated under this Westminster model. Australia again was an English colony. Canada again English colony, and then a handful of Caribbean states carry this model as well. So this is parliamentary and first past the post. So this is not sort of the PR system where they distribute the votes. This is the single member districts. They still have a parliament and a prime minister that they choose, but their elections run off the same type that the United States uses, the single member district, plurality, whatever you want to call it. Okay. The third model is the US model. It's pretty rare. We're a very idiosyncratic country in our governance and our constitution. And obviously, this is first past the post and a presidential system. Okay, the fourth model is the Latin American option. So you have PR elections and PR sort of coalitional government in parliament, but you also have a presidency. And some of the presidencies are pretty powerful over there, like Lula and Jair Bolsonaro and Milei and others are pretty powerful leaders. Oftentimes, the parliament actually takes a backseat to the president, which seems to be more and more the US system too these days, where Article 1 was supposed to be about, Congress holds the power. But that has shifted over the last few generations in America, and especially over the last, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. Finally, you have what's called the mixed options. This is a whole bunch of different shit, right? Okay, you've got France, who has PR elections and a parliament, but they also have a presidential single member district runoff system. You've got Germany, where the Bundestag, I think, I might have these flipped, but one of the houses is a PR system, one of the houses is a single member district system, and they have a prime minister who chooses the cabinet, and the prime minister tends to be the most powerful. So if you look at Angela Merkel, she was their prime minister for like, God, 15 years or something. Um, but you also have a president, but the president doesn't really do anything but glad hand. Germany's kind of a weird system. Okay, let's see what's next. Okay, section 4. We'll skip through that. We'll move on to the final section, thinking about democratic constitutions, some guidelines. So, Dahl makes the point that democracy doesn't work without proper underlying conditions. We've talked about a few of them. One, assumptions of equality of all citizens. Two, you probably have to have a middle class from what research has shown over the last 50 years. It can't just be supplanted into a society, right? Like, look at Afghanistan. That did not work. Look at Iraq. It did not work. You can't just force democracy where the conditions for democracy just do not exist, right? You will inevitably get a collapse of the system. There's also no such thing as a perfect constitution, right? There are a lot of different priorities that a lot of different goals that we could prioritize. Um, do we want better representation? Do we want fairer representation? Do we want excellent transparency of policymaking? Do we want effective government? Because sometimes better representation leads to more ineffective government, which we will talk about in this class. Do you want responsive legislators? There are a lot of different ways that we could sort of prioritize our goals. And I would offer sort of this last piece. There was a really fascinating statement about the United States where Dahl says over 2 centuries, Americans seem to have developed a political culture, skills, and practices that enable their presidential congressional system with first past the post, federalism, and strong judicial review to function satisfactorily. But the American system is exceedingly complicated and would probably not work nearly as well in any other country. In any case, it has not been widely copied. Probably it should not be. I found that fascinating, right? And a lot of Democratic scholars say the same thing. Like America's just too complicated. There's too many levels of government. There's too many elections, and accountability becomes more and more difficult due to sort of questions of federalism and things like that. So I thought this was a really fascinating quote, and it's pretty indicative of the way that a lot of democratic theorists think about the United States political system and electoral system in general. Okay, that's all I've got for you. I will get the paper one post up today, and I'll start pumping out the next unit's lectures. Have a great day. Thank you.